we have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
But the end of these two wars affords us an opportunity. It allows us to refocus our intelligence and military assets and resources to other parts of the world where they are needed, where we face new challenges. This is the world you are graduating into. This is what I want to talk about today with you for a few minutes. I believe we, and particularly you, your class, has an incredible window of opportunity to lead in shaping a new world order for the 21st century.
I received a vision from God in which I saw a coffin overlaid with an American flag being lowered into the ground. At the time I saw this vision, I saw another vision. I saw Obama in the White House as he took the Constitution of the United States and laid it open on top of the fire in the fireplace. And the one thing that was left was we, the people. Nothing was left, only we, the people, in the vision. I believe that this vision was from God.
In covertly recorded off-air transmissions from the Bush-Clinton presidential election campaign in the 1990s, we can see that Bill Clinton was nothing more than a puppet to the puppet masters which placed him in the White House. Bill Clinton's demeanor seems to be similar to a person who is under a hypnotic trance.
Why was Bill Clinton hypnotized? And what was his agenda? Or better yet, what was the agenda of those who hypnotized him? And is America being hypnotized today? Learn in this video how Bill Clinton is working strategically with Obama to further destroy the United States of America. It was under the Clinton administration that we received Nafta. And through this treaty with Nafta, we now see many of our products made in China. Thank you, Bill, for destroying this nation, for at least laying the groundwork. I believe Bill Clinton was the one that built the coffin for this nation. And Obama is the one driving the nails.
This issue turned out to be a defining moment for our nation.
In this election, at this defining moment, change has come.
I spoke with one of the folks who was in the reception just a few moments ago, who told me that he was in China watching the vote on international television when it was taken. And he said you would have had to be there to understand how important this was to the rest of the world. Not because of the terms of Nafta, which basically is a trade agreement between the United States, Mexico, and Canada, but because it became a symbolic struggle for the spirit of our country and for how we would approach this very difficult and rapidly changing world, dealing with our own considerable challenges here at home. I believe we have made a decision now that will permit us to create an economic order in the world that will promote more growth, more equality.
After 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order, and instead it looks like we got a lot of disorder. We still, and after 9/11,
better preservation of the environment and a greater possibility of world peace. We are on the verge of a global economic expansion that is sparked by the fact that the United States at this critical moment decided that we would compete, not retreat. In a few moments, I will sign the North American Free Trade Act into law. NAFTA will tear down trade barriers between our three nations. It will create the world's largest trade zone and create 200,000 jobs in this country by 1995 alone. The environmental and labor side agreements negotiated by our administration will make this agreement a force for social progress as well as economic growth. Already the confidence we've displayed by ratifying NAFTA has begun to bear fruit. We're now making real progress toward a worldwide trade agreement so significant that it could make the material gains of NAFTA for our country look small by comparison. Today we have the chance to do what our parents did before us. We have the opportunity to remake the world. For this new era, our national security, we now know, will be determined as much by our ability to pull down foreign trade barriers as by our ability to breach distant ramparts. Once again, we are leading, and in so doing, we are rediscovering a fundamental truth about ourselves. When we lead, we build security, we build prosperity. Our own people. We've learned this lesson the hard way. Twice before in this century, we have been forced to define our role in the world. After World War I, we turned inward, building walls of protectionism around our nation. The result was a Great Depression.
Back in good old 1933, we faced depression here in our country. FDR made new deals to help us out, so we could conquer unemployment and the drought. Yeah, let's learn history for the midterm that we all have to study for. Yeah! I see the cause of the Great Depression. Did anyone forget to mention the stock market crash in 29? Lost 40 billion down the line. And oh, the bank failures, the deposits were uninsured. People lost their savings and stopped all kinds of purchasing. That led to the reduction in the workforce, people losing jobs, and high tax on all imported goods gave us money problems. Debts piled up, money was lost, and we slipped into depression. And no matter how hard he tried, Hoover didn't really help us much at all. Back in good old 1933, we faced depression here in our country. FDR made new deals to help us out, so we could conquer unemployment and the drought. Yo, the depression impacted the humans. Homelessness gave us competition for work. The unemployed didn't feed their families or themselves, so they lived in the dirt. In Hoovervilles, cause it's Hoover's fault. Living in shacks, cause it's Hoover's fault. Starvation and illness swept the land, cause no one could eat. Hoover first fall. Sure, for one, he expanded the government, but didn't want to pay for the veterans to avoid all of the deficit spending. Good thing the election was coming. We had a guy to help the poor. FDR tried to settle the score. He made a new deal and lots of laws. Took our government and expanded the cause. Oh, he made the CCC, which made more jobs for men like me, and that helped out the economy. He also made protection for kids and elderly, because FDR provided jobs and unions and made a safety net for the country's back with social security and positivity. But of course there was still negative impact. The government's involvement shot through the roof. Needy citizen motivation went poof. And all these deals and all these acts, the deficit spending kicked our butt. Back in good old 1933.
On you, Barack Obama. It is time you ran a campaign consistent with your messages in public. That's what I expect from you. Meet me in Ohio. Let's have
conquer unemployment and the drought. Whoa, the New Deal led to big government, political culture change for the land. With insured bank deposits by the FDIC, we bought power from the government dams. The New Deal led to big government, political culture change for the land. With fraud protection from the SEC, retirement pay for Social Security. Forgive my singing, but I hope this helps you study. Back in good old 1933, we faced depression here in our country. FDR made new deals to help us out, so we could conquer unemployment and the drought. Back in good old 1933, we faced depression here in our country. FDR made new deals to help us out, so we could conquer unemployment and the
debate
drought.
about your tactics and your behavior in this campaign.
It goes to the question of truthfulness. In other words, did Barack Obama say one thing privately to a foreign government and then say something entirely different to the voters of Ohio and Texas? And
the Prime Minister's office has been interfering in the Democratic primaries with false accusations, trying to silence Barack Obama, who simply wants to amend the NAFTA.
The Canadian Embassy in Washington has issued a statement indicating it's regretted the fact that information has come out that would imply that Senator Obama has been saying different things in public than in private. Mr. Speaker, the Government of Canada does not condone this and certainly regrets any implication.
And now we learn that a much higher source from Canada revealed late last month that the NAFTA promises came from a very different source, the Clinton campaign. According to an unnamed source speaking to that nation's equivalent of the Associated Press, the Canadian press, it was Clinton's campaign that contacted the Canadian government to reassure them about Clinton's anti-NAFTA rhetoric. The Canadian press reporting that the source heard the chief of staff to Canada's prime minister say in a room full of television journalists, quote, "Someone from Clinton's campaign is telling the embassy to take it with a grain of salt. Someone called us and told us not to worry."
It was a bad idea because NAFTA was written specifically to drive down wages. I mean, Ross Perot was right. When he warned America that we were going to lose millions of jobs, he was 100% right. He knew what the Democrats at that point weren't ready to say, and that is that NAFTA was going to cause America to lose millions of jobs because wages would, because manufacturers, corporations would seek other countries where wages were lower, where workers didn't have any rights at all, where they could make a bigger profit. Now, let's think about this for a minute. It was a Democratic president who passed NAFTA, President Clinton. When he passed that, the Democrats lost the Congress in the next election. Why? Because people just lost confidence that Democrats would protect their wages and protect their jobs. In this election, you have many people running for president who voted for NAFTA or who supported NAFTA. And now, I wasn't in the Congress, but I made my position very clear right from the beginning that there should be no trade agreements unless they include workers' rights, human rights, environmental quality principles. Let's look at where we are right now. We've lost millions of jobs to NAFTA. We're losing millions more due to China trade. And as president, my first act in office will be to cancel NAFTA and get out of the WTO and to have trade that are based on those workers' rights principles plus protection of the air and the water and the land, environmental principles, plus prohibitions on child labor, trade labor, or slave labor and prison labor. So I offer that to you for your consideration, because trade is one of those areas where the Democratic Party has absolutely failed the American people, sold them out. And I'm the one Democrat who understands that workers need a president who isn't going to be mourning while there's grass growing in parking lots where they used to where they used to make steel, cars, washing machines, bicycles, automotive supplies, and now there's grass growing in parking lots.
90 seconds.
Well, it all depends on what you mean by all of this. The CFR exists, the Trilateral Commission exists, and it's a, quote, conspiracy of ideas. This is an ideological battle. Some people believe in globalism, others of us believe in national sovereignty. And there is a move on toward a North American Union, just like early on there was a move on for a European Union, and it eventually ended up. So we had Nafta and moving toward a Nafta highway. These are real things. It's not somebody made these up. It's not a conspiracy. They don't talk about it, and they might not admit about it, but there's been money spent on it. There was legislation passed in the Texas legislature unanimously to put a hold on it. They're planning on millions of acres taken by eminent domain for an international highway from Mexico to Canada, which is going to make the immigration problem that much worse. So it's not so much a secretive conspiracy. It's a contest between ideologies, whether we believe in our institutions here, our national sovereignty, our Constitution, or are we going to further move in the direction of international government, more UN? You know, this country goes to war under UN resolutions. I don't like big government in Washington. So I don't like this trend toward international government. We have a WTO that wants to control our drug industry, our nutritional products. So I'm against all that, but it's not so much as a sinister conspiracy. It's just knowledge is out there. If we look for it, you'll realize that our national sovereignty is under threat.
Not only has known Bill Clinton practically forever, but also was a major fundraiser for him, and incidentally has embarked on a political career of his own, but more about that in a minute. What I'd like to know, Terry, is can anyone do the kind of persuasive job for President Obama that President Clinton just did?
I think we clearly saw tonight, nobody can take all these complex issues and distill them down and take them out so that millions and millions of Americans can understand the issues and understand what the real choice in the election was going to be all about. And I said this all along, as soon as President Obama asked President Clinton to do this, we knew that he was having President Clinton go out there and lay what it is, this election. It's a choice election. And President Clinton tonight, nobody can do it better. He laid it out on health care, on job creation. You can go the way Mitt Romney wants to go, you can go with President Obama. And after listening to this tonight, I just can't imagine anyone's not out supporting President Obama's re-election tonight.
Yeah, but does he need President Clinton to be with him every day on the stump?
No, I think, well, this is obviously have the most eyeballs here, the convention, everybody watching on TV. This is the frame for the general election as we leave here. And it was such an important speech. It showed how much President Clinton respects President Obama, respects what he has done, talked about all the achievements he's done, talked about what we need to do going together as a nation, working together to compete globally. And that's what President Clinton laid out here tonight. He made the case tonight for President Obama and why he should be reelected.
Terry, you were seated with Chelsea Clinton. What was her reaction?
Well, the both of us just sat there, and we were sitting with a lot of friends, and this is who Bill Clinton is. Nobody can do it better than Bill Clinton. He understands these issues, but he's able to put it in such a way that everybody understands it. He brings it down, brings it into every living room in America. And when you watch that tonight, here was the choice. There's where they want to go. Here's where President Obama wants to go. And President Clinton clearly made that an easy choice for Americans tonight.
So we can see clearly that Obama is certainly following in the steps of the Clinton administration. The question is, do we understand the agenda? We say that we believe America's being destroyed. But why do we sleep? Why don't we do something? You see people talk about it, doing something. And I don't mean violence. I don't mean uprise. I mean, we need to repent. We need to turn from our sins because God is allowing this judgment. God is allowing this country to be destroyed because this nation rejects God. When you reject God, you reject His protection. So where is Bill Clinton headed next? You'll see in the next clip. After he's already done all the destruction that he's done in this nation by destroying jobs and by sending most of our manufacturing over to China, now he's headed, guess where?
I'm Ed Griffin. I'm an author, researcher. I've written some books. I've written a book most recently of interest called The Creature from Jekyll Island, a second look at the Federal Reserve System. And I've written other things on the United Nations called The Fearful Master. I wrote a book on natural cancer research and therapy called World Without Cancer. Well, the United Nations is different things to different people. Most people think that the UN is our last best hope for peace. That's the way it was sold to me when I was in school. It was offered as an organization where different nations could come together and work out their problems and their grievances in a peaceful manner and be a means of reducing world conflict and increasing the economic prosperity of all of the member nations and all of these wonderful things. In reality, it turns out to be none of the above. In reality, the United Nations is the seat of what the member governments hope will become a true world government. It's to be a government. And there's nothing inherently wrong with a world government, but we need to ask the question, what kind of a world government is this going to be? If the United Nations were going to be a government based on all of the things they've said it was going to be, peace and prosperity and protecting individual rights and all of these things, I think it'd be pretty hard to oppose it. But in reality, it's being built as a model of collectivism. The political ideology that is inherent in the United Nations is collectivism. It's a word that probably needs to be defined for our purposes here, but in general, it means a totalitarian system, a system of concentration at the top and the people being at the bottom being ruled from above. Not that the people have any voice in determining the direction of their government or the world, but they are to be told what the direction is, and they're to be told to follow it. Collectivism is a philosophy of big government and small people, and it's a philosophy that supposedly all of this is being done in the name of society. In other words, it's for the greater good of the greater number, supposedly. And so you're supposed to go along with whatever inconvenience or insult to your freedom comes along, because after all, it's in the greater good of the greater number. And this is the rationale being used, has been used for quite some time, to justify all kinds of horrible atrocities. All the leaders have to do is say, well, it's for the greater good of the greater number. That's the philosophy that's built into the United Nations from top to bottom. And so therefore, the answer to the question, what is the United Nations? The United Nations is a budding or building world totalitarian system. The United States has always been the major supporter and financer of the United Nations. So you'd have to say that the key people behind the United Nations are the globalists, I think is the best word to use to describe them, in the United States. Now, who are they? They would be politicians, they would be people in the State Department, they would be international financiers. You must remember, for example, that the land where the United Nations is seated was purchased by the Rockefellers. and donated to the United Nations. Well, they didn't do that as a means of being great humanitarians, although that's the image that many people have. They did because they had a keen interest in building this new world order, and they thought this would be the seat for it, and so that's why they did that. So the people behind it in the United States are the international financiers who are located here, primarily the Rockefeller Group, and what's left of the old J.P. Morgan Group, and some of the larger banks. But primarily, you find most of these people in an organization that is not well known, but definitely very important. It's called the Council on Foreign Relations. It's a group in the United States with about 4,000 members at the most, and yet these people, number one, are all dedicated to building a new world order, a global government, based on the model of collectivism. And number two, you find them at the tops of most of the important organizations in this country. You find them in government. About half of our presidents and vice presidents and just about all of our secretaries of state and secretaries of defense and heads of the CIA and the FBI and all of the important positions in government. If you look at who these people are over the years, they're members of this Council on Foreign Relations. Most of the great universities they have as their president or their board of directors dominated members of the Council on Foreign Relations. The news channels, ABC, CBS, NBC, the Turner Broadcasting System, Murdoch. I mean, Murdoch is a well-known member of the Council on Foreign Relations. So all of these major power centers of society are in the hands of this small group, under 4,000 members. And so you ask who's behind it. If you want a list, that's a good place to start. Write to the Council on Foreign Relations office in New York, as I have done every year, and I ask for a membership report or an annual report. And on the back of each report, they proudly list all of their members. So that's where you find who is behind the United Nations. That's a hard word for many people to accept, or a phrase, to accept that we have an internationalist elite. A lot of people believe that, in this country, we're the masters of our own political destiny. We don't have an elite. Maybe we have some rich people. Yes, we have some powerful people. But the idea of an elite or an international elite is foreign to the thinking of a lot of Americans. But the truth is we do have one. And their intention is to, number one, maintain their positions of being the elite, having vast power and control and financial wealth. And number two, to extend it to the international level. We have these international elites, we call them international, but basically they're housed in each nation. We have them in England and France and the United States and Germany and so forth. And now the big move among these people is to coalesce into a true international elite, whereby they will be operating through the governmental power of the United Nations. Now they really have clout, because there's no nation in the world that can escape their power, because the way these people work is that if they want to accomplish something, if they have an agenda, let's just pick one at random, disarmament or another one, population control or something like that. As it is now, they have to convince each of the respective nations and their governments to implement those agendas. But once you have a true United Nations with true governmental power, with real military forces, and once you have turned over to these agencies of international power control over your armies and over your air force and over your weapons of mass destruction, you have created a global government which is cannot be challenged by any nation whatsoever. So now these international elites do not have to worry about convincing the governments in each part of the world. As long as they control the center of this power, which is the United Nations, they therefore can control the world. It's a very heady wine, I'm sure, but that's what their objective is. But the obligation of the United States to the United Nations on a legal front has become entwined in these things we call treaties. So if you're talking as a globalist or as an internationalist and you want to see the building of this new world order, you would say that our obligation to the United Nations is legal and it's binding because the United Nations has the status of a treaty. And then we have all these sub-treaties that follow along after it, Nafta and GATA and all of these organizations that are created. Those are all based on treaty agreements. And so, piece by piece, they have been weaving this fabric around us, like the little silk threads that the Lilliputians wrapped around. Who was Gulliver in Gulliver's Travels? I mean, any one thread you could break, but Gulliver woke up one morning and he had these thousands of little threads around his body, and although he was a giant compared to them, he could not move. They had captured him. So I think that's basically what's going on. And in that sense, we have this obligation to the United Nations because we're being bound down by thousands of treaties, and it's destroying our independence.
I see the dark skies are forming and the clouds are up ahead. The storm is approaching just like Jesus said. Will you be ready when the storm rolls in? When the storm comes your way.